state is set to impose a 10% tax on millionaires, and Seattle's socialist mayor, Katie Wilson, is looking at even more progressive proposals to separate residents from their money. Wilson is also sending a pretty clear message to the wealthy: don't let the door hit you on the way out.
I think the claims that millionaires are going to leave our state are like super overblown, and if, the ones that leave, like, bye.
Today, we need to talk about something that the media is almost completely burying. So just imagine this for a second. A man grows up on the East Coast, moves out to Seattle in his early 20s to take a job at a little company called Microsoft. He is in his late 20s when he pitches an idea to Bill Gates, an online travel booking platform. And instead of laughing him out of the room, they let him build it. He spins it out, he takes it public. He does it again, and again, and again. 3 decades in Seattle. $3 billion companies built from nothing but ambition and a willingness to bet everything on an idea nobody else had tried yet. And then one Friday afternoon, he opens his phone, taps out a single post, and puts it out for the world to see. Officially a Las Vegas resident. That's it. No press conference, no lengthy farewell, no explanation. One post, and one of the most influential entrepreneurs in Seattle's modern history was gone. I'm talking about Rich Barton, the man who co-founded Expedia, Zillow, and Glassdoor. The man who helped build the modern Seattle tech scene almost from the ground up. And the man who just quietly told 30 years of loyalty to a city that it was no longer enough. But here's what nobody is telling you about this story. The timing isn't incidental, and it isn't a coincidence. Because when the man who built a company that prices every housing market in America decides that Washington state is no longer the right market to live in, that is a signal louder than anything the state's Economic Development Office could ever put out in a press release. So whether you live in Seattle, work in tech, or just pay taxes anywhere in this country, what's unfolding right now in Washington state matters to you. Because this pattern has a very predictable ending, and we've seen it play out before. This is New York Reports, and this is where we follow the money. Subscribe and hit that like button if you want more of this. And here's my question for the comments. Do you think Washington's political leadership actually understands what it means when the billionaires who built this state keep choosing somewhere else? Drop it below. Let's get into it.
First, let's understand who Rich Barton actually is, because the name might not be familiar to everyone, and it absolutely should be. Barton didn't inherit anything. He grew up in Connecticut, came west in the early 90s, and landed at Microsoft as a product manager at 26 years old. In 1994, he walked into a meeting with Bill Gates and pitched an idea, an online platform where anyone in America could search for flights, compare prices, and book travel from their home computer. Gates gave him a green light. That project became Expedia. He took it public in 1999. Then he came back and built Zillow, a platform that fundamentally changed how every American thinks about the value of their home. And then Glassdoor, where workers go to find out whether their employer is paying them what they're actually worth. 3 companies, 3 industries transformed, 30 years in one city. And on June 5, 2026, he posted on X that he was done. Kids are launched, empty nest achieved, and we're excited to start this next chapter. That's what he wrote. His X bio now reads Las Vegas, Nevada. He did not cite Washington's new 9.9% millionaires tax as his reason. He framed it as a family move. His kids left home, new chapter. But here's the thing about that framing. You could retire in Seattle. You could have an empty nest in Seattle. Rich Barton can afford Seattle. The question isn't whether he can afford it. The question is why someone who built their entire career in a city, who signed the Giving Pledge and ran a family foundation there for decades, why that person picks Las Vegas, Nevada, of all the places on the planet for their next chapter. Nevada has 0 state income tax, 0 capital gains tax, and the timing, 3 months after Governor Bob Ferguson signed Washington's brand new 9.9% income tax on every dollar earned above $1 million into law. That's the context. In that context is the story. Now, if this were the first time something like this happened in Washington state, you might be able to call it a personal decision and move on. But this is not the first time. Jeff Bezos left Washington for Miami in late 2023. He didn't cite taxes either, but But the moment he officially became a Florida resident, he began selling Amazon shares, 50 million of them. His estimated tax savings from that single move, over $600 million. Then Howard Schultz, the man who built Starbucks from a single Pike Place market store into 35,000 locations across 80 countries. He announced his move to Miami the exact same day the Washington State House passed the millionaire's tax after a 25-hour marathon debate. And then Schultz stopped being polite about it. He wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal and said plainly that Seattle Mayor Jenny Wilson vilifies employers. He didn't hedge, he said it. Bezos, Schultz, Barton, three of the most prominent entrepreneurs Seattle ever produced. All gone. All landing in states with no income tax. The city that made them is waving them goodbye. And I mean that literally because here's where this story gets genuinely infuriating. When asked publicly about wealthy residents leaving Washington over rising taxes, Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson didn't express concern. She laughed. At a Seattle University event in April 2026, Wilson was asked whether claims about millionaires leaving were overblown. She chuckled and said yes, not too worried. And at an earlier appearance, when asked about residents threatening to leave over the millionaire's tax, she waved her hand and said, "Bye." Just like that. Bye. To cheers from a progressive audience. That moment went viral. Even fellow Democrats called her out. Former state senator Reuben Carlisle publicly criticized the remark because he understood what she didn't seem to. You don't build a tax base by waving goodbye to the people funding it. So let's follow the money. Because this is where the real story lives. The day after the legislature passed the millionaire's income tax, luxury home listings in Washington spiked 65%. Not gradually, not over a quarter, one day. Kirkland saw listings jump over 100% year over year. Bellevue, Sammamish, Redmond, all surging. Those aren't retirement announcements. Those are people running the numbers, and here's why. Washington's new law creates a 9.9% income tax on everything earned above $1 million annually. But residents must establish domicile in another state within 12 to 24 months, or Washington's Department of Revenue will still come after them. The clock is ticking, and they know it. Stack that on top of Washington's existing capital gains taxes and Seattle's payroll taxes. And the top marginal rate for someone living in Seattle proper could hit close to 18%. Nevada charges 0, Florida charges 0, Texas charges 0. Washington State ranked 45th in the Tax Foundation's 2026 State Business Tax Climate Index before the income tax was even added. 44% of all Washington business owners have thought about leaving, nearly half. Now, here's what makes this more than a story about wealthy people making financial decisions. When people like Rich Barton leave, they don't leave alone. He's not just one person with an impressive resume. He is a node in a network. He sits on the board of Netflix. He's the kind of person other founders call when they're building something and need a door opened. That network moves with him. And the invisible damage is worse. The companies that never get built in Seattle because the founder looked at Washington's tax structure and quietly chose Austin or Nashville or Las Vegas instead. You can count the businesses that leave. You can never count the ones that never arrive. Seattle Attorney Joe Wall testified against the millionaire's tax and made exactly that point. Some of the effects will be visible, he said, but the damage you cannot see is the companies that simply will not come to Washington in the first place. That damage doesn't show up in a press release. It shows up 5 years from now when the tax base is narrower than anyone in Olympia was willing to admit. Because here's how the math works. When the wealthiest residents leave, the revenue hole doesn't stay the same size. It grows. Less revenue means higher taxes on whoever is still there. Higher taxes push more people out. And that pushes the next round of increases and the next round of departures. That is a death spiral. We've seen it in Illinois. We've seen it in Connecticut. And we're watching it begin in Washington State right now in real time. So what is the political response? Mayor Wilson wants to tax businesses and high earners even more to close a city budget gap estimated at up to $140 million. When reporters asked how she planned to convince companies to stay while raising their taxes, she said, "It's not good to give companies an incentive to go to Bellevue. That's the strategy. Don't let them move to the next suburb over, not Las Vegas, not Miami, not Nashville, just Bellevue." As if the only threat to Seattle's economy was a 20-minute drive east. Meanwhile, the Barton Family Foundation is still registered in Seattle. His LinkedIn still lists Seattle as his location, but his ex-bio says Las Vegas, Nevada. The address stayed, the person left. And here's what should stop every single person watching this cold. This isn't a Seattle story. This isn't even a Washington State story. This is a playbook. California is watching companies and billionaires accelerate their departures. Illinois has been hollowing out for years. New York City's new mayor is proposing the highest combined tax rates in the country, while Goldman Sachs builds a $500 million campus in Dallas. The formula is always the same. High taxes, heavy regulation, political leaders who treat successful people as adversaries instead of partners. And then genuine shock when those people start doing the math and choosing somewhere else. Washington State built an incredible tech ecosystem over 30 years. Amazon, Microsoft, Starbucks, Expedia, Zillow, Glassdoor. It didn't happen because the weather was good. It happened because talented people built things here and created conditions for other talented people to follow. And now those same people are leaving and their mayor is waving goodbye. So let's come back to where we started. One post on a Friday afternoon, officially a Las Vegas resident. Kids are launched, empty nest achieved. Rich Barton spent 30 years in Seattle. He co-founded 3 companies that changed how Americans travel, buy homes, and find jobs. He did not say a single public word about Washington's millionaire's tax. He didn't have to. When the man who built a company whose entire business model is reading housing markets and pricing the people who live in them looks at his own state and quietly decides Nevada makes more sense, the signal is already written. You don't need him to explain it. The numbers explain it. Luxury listings spiked 65% in a single day. Washington ranked 45th in business tax competitiveness before the income tax was even added. Bezos left, Schultz left, now Barton. Here's the bottom line. Mayor Wilson's response to all of this has been some version of buy and overblown, and I'm not too worried. But the data doesn't care whether she's worried. The data cares about behavior, and the behavior is telling a very clear story. When the people who build the wealth that funds everything a city and a state does decide the math no longer works, they move. And when they move, the burden doesn't disappear. It shifts to everyone who stays. Rich Barton isn't the problem. Rich Barton is the warning. And in Olympia in Seattle, the only official response seems to be a wave and a smile. That's not policy. That's a city choosing not to compete. Now I want to hear from you. Are you in Washington State right now watching this play out firsthand? Are you seeing businesses in your community start asking the same questions? Drop it in the comments because these conversations matter far more than the people making these decisions want you to think. And if this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into stories that actually affect your life and your wallet, and hit that bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Stay informed, stay sharp, and never stop following the money. I'll see you in the next one.